When parents abdicate, die, or simply disappear, who takes over for the kids? Well, today we put that question to Mary Coogan, Assistant Director of the Advocates for Children of New Jersey. She's here to share the good, the bad, and the ugly about a new trend called kinship care. Welcome, Mary.
Thanks for having me.
Give us an explanation. What are we talking about, kinship care?
Kinship care is generally grandparents or other relatives, but it can also be a close family friend, somebody you refer to as an aunt who's not your legal aunt or an uncle, who actually step into the role of a parent when the parent is not able to take care of their own children, and they take care of the kids.
Now, we're seeing the trend for that grandparents are doing a lot of this heavy lifting, and I would imagine that presents some big issues.
It does. And for the past 10 years or so, they've been really studying it. The Annie Casey Foundation came out with a report recently, Stepping Up for Kids, which looked at some of the issues, especially for grandparents. Now, you have many people who are living just above the poverty level, which might be a family income of $44,000 a year for a family of 4, and now you're bringing another child or 2 or 3 into the household. Sometimes grandparents are living in senior housing, or they're living in 55 and older housing, so they have to move. They didn't anticipate taking care of these kids on a permanent basis, so they need supports, they need help.
And then you have the added elements of grandparents who are perhaps in their 60s and 70s or even 80s, dealing with the energies and the requirements of younger kids, 10-year-olds. I mean, that presents a whole nother set of problems.
Sure, and there's also kids who are removed from their parents because of abuse and neglect, and they have other problems, or they've been moved from several different homes, so they may have issues in school. They might have behavioral issues, which takes not only the energy you're referring to of just typically handling a young child or an adolescent. You have kids who have additional emotional problems, learning disabilities. They might have some medical issues which require more attention. And it's exhausting for grandparents, so they need some respite care, but they do need community supports and financial supports.
So now, is your organization and perhaps others looking at ways to bring more resources to the fore for those people?
Well, we have been, and actually I work in New Jersey, and New Jersey stepped up several years ago to pass a Kinship Guardianship Act, and that was to actually provide those supports to grandparents, recognizing that they needed them and that they were stepping up. I think other states are doing similar work. In New Jersey, I know we have about a third of the kids who are in foster care living with relatives, which we think is a positive. They have that nurturing, stable family, but it's also family that they know. I think more states should do that, and I think that's what the Annie Casey Foundation is pushing for.
There's always an effort to have kids be with family members. But I guess the question is, are there legal rights that the children have that perhaps the other caretakers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, may be in conflict with?
Well, the law requires if a kid is removed from their parents because of abuse and neglect, that the relative is the first place we look. They don't always look at that family friend, though. Some states do better at that. They need to make sure that that relative can provide a safe home, a nurturing home, and a stable home, which is why they need the supports, and they can get approved as a licensed foster parent. So the law does say we have to look to relatives first. However, sometimes the Child Protective Agency is called in to investigate a concern, and maybe it doesn't rise to the level of abuse and neglect under the statute, but they feel it might be better if the child went to live with the relative. And so they make that suggestion, and then the relative is sort of left on their own to go get custody and find community supports without the agency taking responsibility. And that can cause difficulty and can be disruptive for the child.
Let me ask you the philosophical question of whether states should be required to take on the responsibility of caring for kids that are left in that scenario.
That's a great question, and a philosophical debate that occurs with some of this legislation is the difference between families taking care of their own and the state supporting the family to take care of a relative's child. And people have very different views. You don't want to create an incentive for parents to move their child to a relative's home in order to get some type of government assistance. By the same token, if the child has to leave the parent because of military service or because of some type of mental illness or drug addiction where they need to go into rehab, and you're asking the family to step up and take care of the child, I think the government should provide some type of assistance to them, even if it's on a temporary basis.
You know, we're seeing an interesting shift in the population with the growing number of baby boomers now, and I wonder if that perhaps has added to this whole issue of grandparents becoming more involved in the lives of kids.
It could be. I do think a lot of parents rely on relatives, primarily grandparents, to be child care providers as people's income is tight, or somebody has to move to a different state for employment reasons and they don't want to uproot the entire family, so they want a relative to take care of a child temporarily.
Let me ask you real quickly, because we're running out of time. For those parents, grandparents, or aunts or uncles who are in that situation, are there resources they can go to for help?
Sure. There's public assistance benefits. They definitely should not allow a child protective service agency to dump a child in their home without providing some type of supports. They can generally get food stamps. Sometimes they can get housing assistance. Most states have a public health program. We have New Jersey Family Care, but every state has some type of public health insurance that a relative can access for the child.
Okay, so they've got to do some research.
They do.
All right. Thanks a lot. Insightful.
Thanks for your
interest.
interest.
Talk about more of that next time.